Hello everyone and welcome to the Anime Club Reviews. I am the Poetry Ninja.
I am Shy Inuyasha.
And I am K3, filling in for Crimson Lord today.
And today we watched Seraph of the End. For those of you who are unaware of this anime, which I was until today, it is a series that's sort of a post-apocalyptic look at if vampires were to really take over the world, what would happen? Children are abducted and taken into custody by the vampires and experimented on. But there are rebel forces that are fighting back and trying to take down the vampires at all costs. And when a young boy named Yuichiro breaks out of the vampire's hold, he in turn tries to join the freedom fighters and take down the vampires one by one.
I think you meant to say Moon Demon Company. When you say Freedom Fighters, you're making it sound like it's from Sonic.
Well,
you get the gist of it.
Okay, the official name is the Moon Fighting Force, but it's...
Moon Demon Company.
Yes, Moon Demon Company, but it's essentially a human freedom fighting force because it's fighting against vampires' hold on humanity and trying to gain back humanity's freedom. More or less.
Well, yes, that is basically it in a nutshell, but I'm sure there are some parts where humans aren't experimented on, but they're mostly used as livestock for the feeding source for vampires. Because they don't want to kill their food, otherwise they'd go mad with crazed hunger, which would, in their case would be a mad thirst, which would make them even worse monsters than they are right now.
Well, I thought it was interesting at first. The fight sequences are really cool, but I felt it was a bit of a predictable show. I kind of knew what was going to happen with each moment as it played out. Even when things were looking good for certain characters, it in turn turned out the way I thought it was going to be. Yes, all of these hopeful things are happening, but I have this sinking suspicion that things aren't playing out right. Turns out I was right. But I won't reveal exactly what those moments are because you'll kind of have to see them for yourself.
Well, I guess should we just move on to our characters then?
Absolutely.
Sure.
All right, who wants to talk about, how should we talk about Yuichiro Hyakuya?
Oh, where do we begin with the protagonist?
Where do we begin with Yuichiro?
My first description of him would be problem child for one thing.
Yeah. He also seems to be that stereotypical loner, tough guy that doesn't really want to cooperate with anybody. Sort of like that dark and brooding anime character that just, I lost everything and now I'm fighting back to get it all.
But he's more of a smart aleck attitude with him.
Yeah, still a part of that characteristic, if people know what I'm talking about.
You mean how he acts all high and mighty, thinking he's gonna take down every single vampire?
Yes.
But like most characters like that, all those around him pretty much doubt or make fun of him for it.
Yep.
He was okay, but as a protagonist, I wasn't really following through with him because it's the same type of drive that I've seen from every single character, and it didn't really feel like I've seen anything different from this guy. I've seen many characters in his same predicament, and they all play out the same way. There wasn't really anything there for me to say, I really understand this character.
Still,
Granted, I know what he is, but I can't relate as much to really feel like,
well, we've seen through the first few episodes, they are slowly but surely doing things to help Yuichiro break out of that shell of his, and he's starting to soften up a bit. I mean, I guess this is also partially not only his backstory, but how he develops from being a loner to being a part of a team. But I get the feeling that's been seen elsewhere before, hasn't it?
Yes. It's been seen many times over by, I don't know. Yusei from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, Cloud
Well, he didn't seem
Strife
all that-
from Final Fantasy VII.
I don't know. Yusei didn't seem all that dark and brooding to me.
No, but he was kind of that silent loner type that Yuichiro still sort of fits into that brooding sort of characteristic.
Oh yeah, what do you call those friends he had back in the satellite?
Well, we're getting off topic.
We're getting off topic.
We'll save this for later.
Yes.
Why don't we move on to the next character?
Mikhaila Hyakuya.
Yes,
Hyakuya.
Yes, Mikhail, who I think is probably my favorite character out of everyone in the series. Just because I would get into spoiler territory about how he's a crucial character to the series, but I enjoy where he's at. He's in a situation where he doesn't really like who he is. Not personality-wise, but outer appearance-wise. And that seems to be a very interesting point for his characteristic, because he wants to do everything to take out vampires, but he in turn can't really go through with that because of his situation.
Maybe
He's doing everything he can to reunite with his long-lost friend, but it's not as simple as it may seem.
I think he should just come out and say it about what he is in the anime.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, basically.
So he turns into a vampire, which should be interesting as a villain, but he's not really a villain. He is a hero character. But because he is a vampire, he is looked upon differently in society, depending upon who he's talking to. If he's talking to the vampires, they respect him and give him everything that he could ever ask for.
Well, some
But
of them.
when he tries to approach humans, especially those that know of him, they look at him differently because of what he is. And that seems to be the interesting dynamic, because he hates what he is, but he wants to do everything to prove himself to be that he is the right person for the job.
Anyway, for those of you who are wondering, just because you and Mikhaila both have the last name Hyakuya, that's not because they're related, even though they look like polar opposites. They actually have that family name because they grew up in the same orphanage. And they just thought since everything was taken from them, they would at least use the name of their orphanage as their family name for them and the other survivors of that orphanage. But in a way, it's also interesting because they both grew up in the same place, a somewhat similar background, then fate dealt them a cruel hand, splitting them up, and now they're on two different paths. But eventually, later on in the series, my guess is that they'll cross paths again, but probably not in the way they would hope to. Because that's how some of these stories usually go, don't they?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Shinua.
That little imp. She's got to be the one type of character that always tries to push your buttons for her own enjoyment.
Well, she's doing it for the right reasons, because she's working for, the Moon Demon
Company.
Yes, the Moon Demon Company. I'm not going to remember it. No
Yeah.
matter how many times I say it.
You can paint it how you wish, but honestly, I think she just likes being a little devil and teasing you and everybody else that she thinks she can have fun with.
That's true, but she's also teaching you the ways of the Moon Demon Company.
But at least
And
she
how
knows how
it
to make fun
works.
with it.
And she's also pushing the characters in the right direction, so that way they can go forward and actually do what they need to do. So she's following the guidelines, but she's also trying to make sure that things move forward because it gets boring and stale when things just stay the way they are.
Next character.
Shiho!
Shiho Kimizuki.
Oh, Shiho.
The kind-hearted, quiet soul.
Yes.
Yeah.
The pink-haired guy.
Yes.
Oh.
Well, actually, Shiho showed up before him, so...
He pretty much feels like a different version of Yuichiro. He has a bit more sincerity because he's actually fighting for someone who's still alive and he cares for. Yuichiro has no one left, so he's fighting with only the intent of revenge. Shiho is fighting for a cause to hopefully save someone's life. An admirable thing, but he feels kind of like the same way as Yuichiro. I've seen this type of character before, and there's not much dynamically about him that makes me feel sympathetic. In many ways, this feels almost like the series Blue Exorcist,
Yeah.
with a more apocalyptic look,
Yeah.
and vampires instead of demons.
The demons.
Oh, I think I see. I know which two characters you're
Yeah.
referencing, him and
Yeah.
you two.
Yep.
Yeah, so again, still the only interesting character that I've seen is Mikhail, but
Yeah.
let's talk about Yoichi, the kind of quiet and timid character that we kind of like.
I'll be honest, though. Yoichi, he's like a kind soul who wouldn't hurt a fly, so he's the last person I would expect to see in a place that's all about killing vampires.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That is until we found out about his backstory, anyway.
yeah. It's pretty much the same way with everybody. Everybody is out to take down the vampires because they killed every last loved person that they know and hold dear.
They're always fighting for something.
Yes, but Yoichi feels like your common man. Not everybody wants to just jump into the military with full arms when something dangerous happens. Yoichi has that timidness and sort of fear factor because he doesn't want to go through with everything because he is realizing, holy cow, this is real.
But you have to give him props for being a loyal friend to you throughout the first few episodes. So, loyalty is one of the few things you consider as a good quality in some of the characters in this series.
And I think that's the driving message the series is trying to go for, that loyalty is the most important thing in life, but I've seen it done differently and to a much more effective status. So, let's move on to a character that I thought his last name started with an L. Guren Ichinose.
Now, that's a character I like.
Oh. I didn't like
not
him
much
all
to talk
that
about.
much.
Aside from being a high-ranking officer, despite being such of a slacker on his duties, he always seems like the kind of person who can be serious when he wants to be, but seems to get a kick out of you always trying to bug him about getting into the Special Vampire Extermination Squad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Seen that character type before. Seen it done better.
Yeah.
He was okay, but not
very likable in a manner of sense.
really.
Oh, come on, you gotta see him as... He kind of reminds me of Kakashi if he was more strict and brutally honest with his students when they screwed up and tried picking fights with him.
Okay. And then I see characters like Roy Mustang, who was kind of that same particular
No.
way. Yes, he was a bit more forward than Guren, but he's a lot more charismatic, so to speak. And I think that was the missing point with Gurren's character. There wasn't enough charisma to really make him likable. If you like him, that's fine. I'm not going to judge anybody for liking a character I don't like. Same thing goes for people disliking me for a character I may like.
I just respect characters who have so much power and they can just relax in peace whenever they want to, just because they know that they can go to action anytime. I mean, it's like, you know he can fight good, but he doesn't mind. He just likes going about his days the best he can.
So, our last character is
one of the vampires.
sort of the villain?
Sort of, yes.
Farid.
Farid.
Lord
Farid
Bathroy.
Bathroy. Oh my god.
Don't say Bath because he's not cleaning himself. He's not a clean man. Or maybe
He's
he is.
very dirty.
I think it was like Bathroy.
Yeah,
Bathroy.
yeah. Well, I don't know where to go with Farid.
You could
He's
start with
so
being...
full of himself in the beginning.
Plus, he's the instigator of you and Michaela's dark past.
But here's the thing, I think he has a thing for Michaela. Not just for his blood, maybe a bit more.
Yeah, which makes it feel really, really disgusting to see him as a villain. I've seen characters like this as villains, and it's a perfect way to look at it because in some sort of way it could be seen as a father figure. But I don't really feel comfortable with characters in that particular role.
No.
Granted, it works as a villain because now you really have something antagonistical against said character. But
honestly,
shivers just
I didn't see Farid and Michaela as the father-son or anything else. I seen it more like a master and his pet.
Yeah, which is really creepy.
Which could also fall into the father-son dynamic because Lord Bothroy has given Mikhail everything that he could want. A second chance at living, but with a price.
Yes.
And it's sort of this really tough thing.
Now, here's how I see it. Farid doesn't seem like one of those creeper characters. He seems more like the type that he seems nice, but he's got a hidden plan. Basically, he's the one that likes luring his prey and then tricking him at the last moment. He's always trying to play both sides to save his own neck.
And I could see that a mile away when I first was introduced to him.
Yep.
I knew that there was something off about him. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I just knew that there was something off with his kindness, and that makes it for a very predictable villain.
I mean, there are numerous fangs in the anime, but I think Farid's the one who most likely resembles a snake.
So, we've talked about a lot of the characters, but we haven't really talked much about
the good and bads.
Yeah. I think the goods for me are that there are some interesting character dynamics with a couple of characters, but overall, it is sort of a very predictable anime. I'm not going to diss anyone for liking the series itself, but I thought it was going to be something better, but it didn't. My expectations were far too high.
Well, you've seen only the first few episodes. It gets better once they are actually out in the field. Trust me.
Okay.
Trust me, once they leave the confines of the base and the school, things get a lot more intense and there's a lot more storylines that open up with numerous other characters. My point is, don't knock the series until you watched it till its current last episode. I mean, there are at least 24 in this entire series. The first half's only episodes 1 through 12 or 13.
Well, I think my goods are the same as the character interactions that are going on throughout the first few episodes. And the bads were, I would say the character development with some of the characters in the first few episodes, like Goran, for example, is one of the biggest characters that I've seen that could use a bit more development throughout, like later throughout the series.
Actually, there is something related to counteract that, but that would lead to spoilers, so I'm zipping my lip about that.
And that's all I got.
Well,
I honestly don't have any bads. And I already said my goods.
well, I guess we move on to our overall ratings of said series. So with me, I'm going to give it 2.5 stars out of 3. Or not 3, 5. Sorry, math
Wow.
today.
Wow, we have score, huh?
It's a predictable series, but there's a couple of things that make it somewhat interesting.
Yeah, I would give this a 3.5 out of 5. Not only was it a pretty predictable anime, but there could have been some things that can be worked on a bit for this series.
Well, I've seen the series up until its current, most recent episode on the series, so I'm just gonna stick with the score I gave it when I finished watching it all the way through. 5 out of 5.
So that is 11
12 out of 15. 2.5, and you said you did
3.5, which is
6.
6, plus you did 5, so that's 11 out of 15. That's not too bad.
Well, normally I would think if it was one of those shorter series, then we would probably watch the other half hoping for a bigger score, but there's more episodes than that, so this will be the only chance we get to review it until we're requested again.
Well, with that, thank you for watching our video and review. And tune in next time when we watch one of my favorite films, Wolf Children! So, with that, this is the Anime Club signing out.